Welcome to Business Class, the podcast about the most important topics in the digital world. Every 4 weeks, Silo Bono is host of The Brightest Mind Shaping Our Digital Future. This is a live recording of our new web show, Business Class Live. We have expanded our podcast to a live show where our international audience on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter can discuss the digital industry's most relevant topics directly with our guests. In the first episode that premiered in December 2019, Thilo's guest is Diana Rees. She is the founder and CEO of ZKSystems, a highly innovative industrial IoT startup. Diana explains how equipment manufacturers can be empowered to offer higher value to their customers and outbeat competition by a pay-per-use business model. Also, Thilo and Diana will take a look how the German blockchain ecosystem performs in comparison to the international market. We ask you to excuse the sound quality of the interview that was influenced by the transmission speed of the internet. We wanted to share its exciting content with you nonetheless. Have fun with an interesting talk about a truly revolutionary technology.
A very warm welcome to Diana Rees, CEO of ZKSystems. Welcome, Diana.
Thank you, Thilo. Happy to be here.
Diana has an incredible company, and we talking about, as said, about the topic of blockchain, about industrial IoT, and ZKSystems is a blockchain-based software and enables equipment manufacturers to sell equipment based on usage. So a completely new business model that is also behind it. And together we want to take a look at how manufacturers can be empowered to offer higher value to their customers and outbeat competition by a pay-per-use business model. That sounds a little bit complicated, but I'm sure Diana will explain a bit more. But Diana, you're such an incredible leader and founder, and ZKSystems is not the first company that you brought to life. Maybe you give us first a little bit background who you are and where you're from, and how all the way your entrepreneurial journey leads you to ZKSystems in the world of blockchain.
Sure, Thilo. So let me tell you a little bit more about myself. It's indeed not my first startup. I already used to found a startup it was an e-bike startup. It was 2013 when electric mobility for consumers was taken off. And before that, I used to work in China in production outsourcing. So where that was my first touching point with production processes and manufacturing. This is also how I started noticing the manufacturing trends and how I came up with the first idea for the e-bike startup, which I then founded again back in Berlin, from China back to Berlin, 2013. I sold the company in about 3 years ago, 2016. And while at that startup, I also realized that in manufacturing, there is a trend from just producing qualitative hardware equipment, let's say, whatever it is, machines, folding machines perhaps, or cutting machines, laser machines, whatever they are. But there is a trend that manufacturers are looking to also offer services on top or become service providers. So they are looking for a new competitive edge apart from just offering the qualitative hardware. And this is how my journey began towards what we are offering now, equipment as a service.
It's really amazing. And this term, I think that you defined, I would say, an entire new category with equipment as a service. I mean, blockchain, when we think back, let's say last year, right? Blockchain was a little bit also criticized, and there's always like a little bit up and down in the industry, also often related, of course, to the topic of cryptocurrencies. Maybe you can give us a little bit insight how you see the industry, and especially also as you are providing a dedicated company and service in the B2B field, right? How this maybe differs and what kind of potential is in blockchain, especially in the sector of B2B?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So this is a great question, because it's true that we saw a big hype around blockchain technology last year, and you could see sort of all kinds of business model, all kinds of businesses, gaming, consumer businesses, platform. There was so much, but I think what was sort of perhaps a gem or harder to see was more in the realm of B2B business. So I think our team recognized this early. So 2017 or even end of 2017, 2018, we started looking into ways how can we actually empower industrial manufacturers and industrial enterprises with the blockchain technology. Perhaps we could bring more transparency, more security for what they offer, and add value this way. It was sometimes hard to go against the hype because the hype was more towards the cryptocurrency, something more perhaps that was more on the surface or something that was more relatable also. But both I and my co-founder, we both have manufacturing backgrounds, both have backgrounds in industrial IoT. So for us, it was a challenge, but it was an interesting question which we posed to ourselves. How can we create value with blockchain in the B2B industrial realm?
I just envision and imagine there is a young startup from Berlin doing industrial IoT, blockchain technology. Then you go, let's say, to South Germany, in the middle of nowhere, there is a typical Mittelstand or enterprise company knocking at their door literally and say, hey, we have a cool solution. We are a cool young startup, not even have maybe 10 people just started and want to sell you something. I mean, how is this relationship between corporate and startups going to work out for you, and what kind of learning you can share with it?
Also a great question. I think the key is, of course, always focus on the value propositions and creating value instead of offering cool technology. So when we speak to our customers or to potential customers, we try to see what are the value propositions which we can offer them with our technology. And actually, it would in a way not matter at all whether it's done with blockchain or whatever it is. The point is, can we offer them more automation? Can we offer them more value with what we offer? And really, blockchain is in a way even secondary, really. So we are using blockchain as any other technology to empower what we offer. And ultimately, I think that's the key, focusing on the value propositions and added value. Other than that, of course, yes, corporates and startups, this relationship is tough. So because for some, it's still new. Some are still perhaps not so open towards working with startups. Some others do recognize the value of agility, of the agile approach, which startups have. They also recognize the highly specialized knowledge and know-how that a startup can build up in a certain niche. So just like we're very specialized in what we do, in what we offer. And I think for a large corporate, for any other large corporate, it's hard to build up that kind of specialized high-tech knowledge in what we do, which is blockchain and equipment as a service. So to answer your question, it depends. For some corporates, it's still hard, but for some, there are many ways and many people at the corporates who are open towards working with startups and looking for innovative solutions.
And is the bigger challenge the cultural gap and the long sales cycles, or is it really to win trust and to really that they understand, oh, there's a new technology, we have also to improve and develop further, and we can't do everything by our own, we need maybe a startup. Otherwise, there maybe someone else comes and will be a new competitor in this space. And to be innovative and to stay innovative, we have to do it. So what is the bigger challenge?
If you ask like this, it's hard. But I think long sales cycles do go hand in hand with building up trust. So I think that's also the key within enterprise relationship, especially as a startup. The Rees per default less trust in what one offers. So we have to always start small and piece by piece gain that trust. And this is what explains the longer sales cycles. But I also am convinced, of course, by gaining trust and by showing that we do offer real value in what we offer and what we build. That's a process. So. Yeah.
Working with big companies like Bosch and SAP and Telefonica, maybe you can give us a little bit insight and an idea what concrete kind of products and working relationships you have with these companies and why they rely on a small Berlin startup, which actually looking for investments. If there are any investors out there, there is an opportunity for to do business, but give us a little bit concrete examples.
Sure. So let me give you an example for a showcase which we built for Bosch Rexroth and presented at Bosch Connected experience in 2019. So what we enabled there was a hydraulic power unit. Hydraulics is actually used in many different areas. So it's used for automotive manufacturing, but it's also used for glass manufacturing or furniture manufacturing. And the usage is always different. So what we enable there is that we measure the exact intensity of usage, and we bill according to that usage. So it's not just pay per hour, but it's actually pay per intensity of usage, which means every hydraulic cycle has a different amount of money which would be billed. Why is it important? Because also the residual value of the machine, of the power unit, of course, depends on the intensity of usage. If you used the machine intensely for 2 years, its residual value is also lower after 2 years. So that was our approach, and we presented it. It had quite good resonance also. So that's just to illustrate how this would work.
Absolutely. And there's always for a company, obviously, a make or buy decision. I mean, I would assume these kind of big companies, they could also say, hey, I understand there's a new way of doing business, and we just put another 50 engineers on it and build it. Maybe you can also, in this way, answer the question, what is the actual blockchain technology? I mean, I think it sounds for everyone understandable, but what is the the actual blockchain component?
So I think basically there are two questions which you're asking, right? So one is, why don't we just, or like, why does not a corporate put a team of 50 developers and then they develop the same? It's hard to set up this process, and it would take also a long time for an enterprise. Sometimes having more developers for software is not necessarily the fastest way to build the software, or it's sometimes the fastest way to build a complex solution which no one then knows how to use. So what I'm trying to say is building something in-house is not trivial. So just having resources does not always help. And having a ready plug-and-play solution is sometimes much easier. So just like it's not just for corporates, but it's also we as a startup, we're not going to build a customer relationship management software. We're just going to take something off the shelf and pay for it because it's already developed and we just use it plug and play, or many other services. So I think there is that. And then regarding the blockchain component, that's sort of another issue because many enterprises, of course, do lack the know-how in blockchain technology. It is still very new, and it does need quite an effort to build up that know-how. So this is also one of our core value propositions as a technical team, which has this know-how and which built the blockchain component in our software. So to give you an example, if we take that hydraulic power unit, which remember, the end customer pays according to the intensity of usage. But what's also important is that this usage, which then triggers payment and billing, is also recorded in a transparent and secure way, so that where the machine user and machine manufacturer both have a ledger of verified usage transactions. And because that's so important that they can securely rely on the usage, which triggers payment, this is where blockchain does play an important role. Especially if you think about it, most cases, it's not just the machine manufacturer and machine user, but it's also a leasing company or a bank, which also finances the production costs. And perhaps even an insurance company, perhaps a third-party service provider. So this is where we also use the multi-access functionality of blockchain and have a transparent way to share the usage data between these participants.
And when you're looking just 5 years ahead, right? I mean, you're right now a young company looking for your pre-Series A round, but 5 years ahead, where do you wish your company stands and what do you want to have to achieve?
So essentially, right now, our goal is to follow the end-to-end approach, end-to-end automation for our customers. So that means currently it's automating the way they deal with usage-based billing and usage-based business model, enabling this for them. But we want, of course, to offer further functionalities, and they are currently on our roadmap. So just for example, we know that, there are leasing companies and banks who are also involved into this setup. So for them, for example, what's interesting is to also use the usage data of the machine to enable scoring, just to give you a peek into some of the functionalities that we have on our roadmap that we want to offer. Of course, also more possibility for the equipment manufacturers to sell more services, because what's great about equipment as a service, it's the first step towards becoming an industrial service provider. So a company like Bosch or other manufacturers, just as an example, they can first offer this equipment as a service, gain higher engagement, but then they can also offer more services on top. And this is where also these additional streams of revenue are coming from, and this higher degree of engagement, of course. So those are some of the functionalities, and of course, we see ourselves as a company which is going to provide high class software for enterprises, while making sure that with our software they have higher value, and the value is that they can automate what they do, focus on their core business, and enabling them to gain competitive edge.
And at the end of the day, can then, with this new business models, companies make more money because now it's more usage and a value based, rather than having just a flat fee, for example, or just a normal license fee. So at the end of the day, is it equals each other's out, or you say, at the end of the day, maybe some pay less, but maybe some much more. Mm-hmm. So it becomes more fair and transparent and companies make more money, or what is the main argument?
I think the important is that it's not just the benefit for machine manufacturer, because then it wouldn't work. It needs to be a benefit for machine user as well. And that's why it's necessary to create this win-win situation where it's like cloud, for example. Cloud is usually also pay-per-use. So depending on what you use, because in hardware business, I think if you have a flat fee, there will always be winners and losers, because those who use too little are going to be those who are losers, essentially. And those who use too much, then they pay all you can eat for what they use a lot. And particularly with hardware, you need to incorporate the risk of the residual value of the machine as a machine manufacturer. And as a machine user, you may want to incorporate the risk of using the machine less, because maybe you are in the crisis, or you all of a sudden have less orders from your customers. This model, pay-per-use, just is the perfect scenario to connect both dots: machine manufacturers' benefits with machine users' benefits.
Talking about the blockchain ecosystem, obviously there are a lot of companies building up right now, and I think the crazy times where they're just ridiculous concepts and trying to scam and making ridiculous amount of money with just a PowerPoint presentation. Now back to real business, serious businesses. So what kind of business models you watching right now in the space? What in the blockchain community you find particularly interesting at the moment? Maybe we can just give our viewers a little insight in the world of blockchain, what's right now trend and what's going on.
That's a good question. Indeed, I would say just a heads up is that even though we are strong believers in blockchain technology, of course, and I myself am, for example, one of the founding members of Bear Chain. It's an organization, a nonprofit organization, which encourages blockchain adoption in Germany. And but I would still say we ourselves are mostly moving within the realm of our customers, of the industrial manufacturers. So just sort of as a heads up, we're not that much involved into the blockchain community today. But what I observe is that I think some of the trends that I see is just anything that sort of has to do with programmable money in terms of the blockchain technology. So meaning, for example, there is a way for a bank or financial institution to incorporate automated token print transactions while still offering a way for their customers, especially for larger enterprises, to still use their normal currency, be it euro or dollars. So, but still something that can enable them more automation with the transactions. I think this is one of the trends, and I do see that there are financial institutions, banks, and of course also startups who are working on this. So broadly speaking, more like fintech, but with more usability, because I think just straightforward cryptocurrency is it's hard in B2B, especially enterprise context, and will take a while. At the same time, what I also observe is that there are many ideas, or there used to be many ideas of sort of taking, let's say, Twitter or Facebook, and let's make it decentralized. I think my observation is that these ideas are sort of not really taken off, but it's because they are maybe too to large scale. Blockchain technology is a process, and it's important to focus maybe on some niche problems. And because there is less hype around blockchain technology, which I think is a great thing because it fosters creativity and fosters people to really think what are these niche problems that we can solve today with blockchain. I think that's more the way to go. So
when we look, especially at the Berlin ecosystem where you are home, I think personally, also from my personal experience, blockchain is definitely a one-stop shop where you get connected. A lot of nice events. So when you want to dive into the blockchain community in Berlin, it's definitely a good address to go. The blockchain community itself is very international. So usually products and services are from day one, like global, like also the investors community who invest in this stuff. So what kind of hubs you're seeing in the blockchain world, and especially what do you see Berlin as the capital of blockchain? And if not, what can Berlin do to become the capital for all things blockchain? Yeah, it's so interesting that, we were, for example, selected to Berkeley Blockchain Accelerator in Silicon Valley in about half a year ago. And so we also experienced the blockchain community in Silicon Valley, and we did realize that Berlin really is a blockchain hub because there are more blockchain startups, there are more blockchain activities. So it's interesting how Berlin developed itself as one of the blockchain hubs. I know there are further hubs, such as in Singapore or in Switzerland, but it is definitely one of the strongest blockchain hubs worldwide. And at least maybe, I'm not sure if, so I don't have the exact statistics, but from what we observed in Silicon Valley, it seems the number of blockchain startups is also higher in Berlin than in Silicon Valley, for example, which is quite almost shocking because when you consider all the other solutions, AI and basically everything tech, it's Silicon Valley usually, which is the place to be. And how comes? I mean, you think that just Berlin is a very, let's say, open-minded international city, we just find the right talent, or why you think? I mean, Singapore would have better weather, I would assume, like Berlin, but why Berlin? What has Berlin? When founders maybe out there think, or investors where to look at, why Berlin? Especially you, as you lived in China and also has such international background. I think first of all, it's the access to deep tech talent. So it's true that in Berlin there are many developers, many also deep tech and embedded developers who I would say who were also those who actually fostered this enthusiasm and hype around blockchain technology. I also think blockchain technology for many of the blockchain startups or many blockchain powered software businesses, it's also, in my opinion, not as easy to find a monetization strategy. Sure, ICO aside, but a long-term strategy of how to actually monetize this is not so trivial. For example, if you create a layer one protocol, something like Ethereum, it doesn't really have like any subscription fee or SaaS monetization behind it. It's actually an open source software. So I think it's hard if you live in a place like Silicon Valley, which is very expensive, where you also need to very clearly and quickly show the recurring revenues and the revenues of how you do business. So I think it's easier maybe in a city like Berlin, which is more affordable, which is perhaps where maybe founders are not under as much pressure to gain revenues. I wouldn't say that was the reason for us specifically, because we are in B2B realm and our value proposition is a little bit different. So we are a SaaS company, but I just think I'm thinking about many other blockchain powered startups where it is a trickier part. So I think that could be one of the reasons. What will the year 2020, to look not too far in the future, bring for the blockchain community, and also personally, what is your personal goal for 2020? For 2020, for us, of course, the main goal is to gain more customers, to enable more manufacturers to offer equipment as a service. We see a lot of dynamics currently for this. So many machine manufacturers are evaluating or are even actually going for it and offering and doing their first tests.
So I think 2020 will see higher adoption for our specific case of equipment as a service. And so for us is, of course, the goal to be one of the drivers and one of the enablers of this, and helping and supporting these companies to offer their equipment, their machines as a service. In terms of blockchain technology, I think it will go, I think my bet is basically it's going to go more towards B2B. It's going to go more towards solving niche problems instead of attempting something like decentralizing the whole Facebook, but it's rather focusing on something small, which creates value today for the customers and taking it from there.
We have another question from the audience, from Jonathan Gardner. He wants to know, what are the objections you face in getting wider adoption of blockchain in new industries?
That's a great question. So I think there are several blockers or stumbling stones. So one is blockchain is often associated with cryptocurrency. And blockchain is, we are, for example, not using blockchain for cryptocurrency, but it is often a block or like sort of a blocking factor, because we need to explain that why is this not cryptocurrency? What's the benefit? So let's put it sort of into educational problem. So people still need to understand it more, which is not anymore problem number one, but it's still there sometimes. That's for one. And another problem is also that in terms of what is the underlying blockchain infrastructure and technology that is used, that's also something that is in its relatively early stage. So I'm speaking about what you use. Is it Ethereum? Is it public chain, permission chain, Hyperledger versus other chains? So there is also a lot of developments that happen, but sometimes it's like, maybe sometimes you don't buy Tesla because you think, well, maybe I'll wait 2 years and it's going to be better because it's still in the early stage. And I think sometimes for the adoption, that's also what the companies are saying, well, let's wait a little bit until it gets more mature.
Hopefully they will not wait too long.
That's
always,
true.
Right? You know what happens. Thank you very much, Dan. It was really, really fantastic, amazing insights. And I hope maybe there's an investor out there who saw this and said, wow, I want at least to have a chat and talk and learn more and maybe look a bit more into it. Jana, thank you very much. It was a great honor and pleasure to have you here. Best of luck and success for your company. Thank you so much for being here. Have a nice rest of the day and all the best. We will watch your company and toi, toi, toi.
Thank you so much, Thilo, for inviting me here. It was a pleasure.